Hey, and welcome to this episode of Your Next Gen Friend. I guess this is already episode 4. We did a 3-part series on sibling dynamics and family business to kick things off. I thought I would just take a moment to officially introduce myself, share more of my story, and maybe help give a little bit of context around why I started this project, why it's so close to my heart, and just make an invitation for those that are going to listen, that are going to hang out, those that are maybe even going to come on and share their story with me about their time being a successor, being a rising gen, being a next gen. This was a space that I wish had existed when I started to step into Elizabeth's business as a successor. So for you to know that you're not alone, being a successor is a big piece of what I'm doing and what I'm hoping to do here. So I thought maybe I could start with a little bit of my origin story. If you had told me even 3 or 4 years ago that I was going to be recording content and doing videos, I'd be like, that is not me. That's not really what I'm excited about doing. But I do have a passion for thinking about and helping and having conversations and facilitating conversations. Growing up, my family did not have the big wealth event that ended up happening later in my life. When I was 2 years old, my dad lost his job, ultimately started his own business. And there was, I can look back at it now. I don't know if at the time I noticed, but a lot of travel, a lot of hustle from my dad as he really grew his business from the ground up. For my sisters and my mom, and my mom was working full time. We were at daycare. And so it was really just, we lived in a small town, Montrose, Colorado. We lived there through 5th grade. I grew up skiing. We grew up playing outside and going jeeping in the mountains. And I just have lots of fond memories of the community growing up and daycare. And yeah, the way that my parents raised me, I never would have imagined that this is where things ended up. When I was in 5th grade, my parents moved us all to Dallas, Texas, so that my dad could take on a business partner and grow his business more. So we did some of the normal things that you do when your parent owns a business. I went into his office and I helped organize some papers and put little labels on things in the workroom. Because my dad's business was more software based, it wasn't like there was a big kind of thing that we could contribute to or work on or kind of learn the trades of when I was young. But my dad was always very entrepreneurial, always encouraging us to follow our passions and do what we were excited about. So when I was in high school, I would say that's really when it started. Maybe even 7th grade, I started to show an inclination for, I love telling stories. I love figuring out how to graphically represent or visually represent something. That took me down the path of working on some home videos and scanning old family photos, which ultimately in high school, I went through a 4-year graphic design program at the Career and Technical Education Center, which gave me hands-on work experience my last year in that program. I had an internship at a D-League basketball team, the Texas Legends in Frisco, Texas. And I was their designer. I did their jerseys and everything like that. Along the same time, I was encouraged and kind of joined a program called the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, which was an entrepreneurial academy for high schoolers and middle schoolers to start their own business. So my first business that I created back in high school, Flaming Squirrel Design of all the businesses, and it was basically freelance graphic design work. But I figured out, oh, hey, it's pretty cool that you can make money doing something that you're good at and that you have fun doing. And so that was my first business. Ultimately kind of went through that program. When you win the business competition at the local level, you advance to the national. And so I went to Rochester, New York, of all places that year for the national competition, which put me in contact with Imagine RIT, which is ultimately where I ended up going to college. So that was really a full circle moment for me. I was a grumpy junior in high school, and my dad was making me talk to all these students about their experience and what that looked like. But that was actually really formative in me being able to see that other people have gone through this experience before and kind of understand that. So maybe even as I reflect on that now, the beginning of peer learning and kind of peer-to-peer sharing experiences and how that helps kind of open someone else's world. What else about me in high school would be important to know? Big band kid. I played piano growing up. In middle school, I picked up oboe. Ultimately, in high school, I also picked up the English horn. And because oboes don't march in marching band, and that's a huge thing in Texas, I did the front ensemble. So marimba, xylophones, and that was a lot of fun and formative too. So a lot of leadership experience me for there in band. I ultimately was getting ready to apply for college, and I don't know, maybe if you grow up with wealth, you don't have this experience, but I remember the first time I was like, oh, does my family have money? Like, how are we different from other people around? And starting to navigate those emotions and that feeling around processing wealth when you're young. It's not that my family and my parents didn't talk about it. We did talk about it a lot, but we never talked about it in terms of an abundance or anything to that capacity. And so all my friends are applying for FAFSA, and I'm like, hey, mom and dad, am I supposed to apply for FAFSA too? And I remember my dad kind of laughing and just saying, no, you don't need to apply for that. And I think that was the first time in my life that I remember. So if you remember that first time, like I was in high school, I remember feeling a little bit embarrassed, like, wait, am I supposed to know more? How am I really different? And so that was kind of the introduction into what does this really mean and what does that look like? And if I do have more, am I supposed to help people who have less than me? I mean, we were raised with a lot of values. So how does that show up in friendships, and what does that look like? Feeling obligated to purchase dinner for people or whatever else, even though that wasn't really my story growing up, it became part of my story and navigating those feelings as I went into college. Ultimately, my dad did make an exit. His company sold twice to private equity, and I watched him kind of go through the change that someone goes through when you're the owner and you build this company and it's your whole life, and eventually you're getting ready to step out and do something different. And kind of in our work at TTS, we call that the next adventure. Like what's next for you? What's coming up? And I think for my dad, I saw him struggle a little bit. That was a change for my mom. It was a change for him. They decided to move away from Texas back towards the mountains, and my dad was commuting a lot. And so there were just a lot of changes at that time. I was graduating college, getting ready to move to Denver with my now husband, Andrew. And we were, just really looking at what that looks like. My dad joined a peer group for people who have gone through exits and are kind of thinking about growing their wealth. And I saw him really flourish there. And I think that experience, he encouraged me just where are those opportunities or those peer groups where you want to grow and learn and kind of push yourself as a human. And so my dad was always encouraging of that. And I've done that in a couple capacities. I've done that professionally with some work. I'm in a group called Exchange, and that's a big facilitation. How do we unlock collective wisdom of a group type of thing, which I can talk about in a minute. There's also Go Abundance Women, which is kind of my personal, professional, hybrid growth side and accountability and setting goals and owning a business and what that looks like. And so all of these peer groups kind of really opened my mind to, hey, do I want to keep working a full-time job? So when I came out of college, we moved to Denver. I got a job in advertising. I did some cool stuff. If you're familiar with the Denver Airport conspiracy theories, I was an art director on the campaign for the Den Files, which is all about the conspiracy theories at the Denver airport. We did some really cool signage and posters that went all over the airport with cats and tinfoil hats and aliens and lasers shooting out of the Blue Mustang's eyes, which was really fun. I went into user experience design. Then after that was working kind of on some big pharma projects, much bigger scale. Really learned a lot about being a manager. I watched some really good managers in that role. which ultimately kind of culminated with at an exchange event. They asked a question: what in your life needs to die to make room for something new to be born? And that is the power of a question. I try to spend time reflecting on questions as much as I can, because when I sat with that question, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to leave my full-time job to go do something on my own. I had been feeling since leaving college that I was ready for something else and ready to kind of do something more. And that really was a moment that kind of spurred me into thinking about starting my own business. And I was exploring my own consulting business and trying to figure out what I was going to build and who I was going to help. I love this idea of kind of designing your life. I read that book by Bill Burnett, and that was a really inspiring piece. And I started designing some stuff around that. And I was like, maybe I could build my own type of work in this space. But who do I want to help? What does that look like? And ultimately led me to, I want to work with rising gens and I want to work with next gens to navigate their family wealth. And ultimately the niche that I fell into was family business transition. And I was thinking back, there's only one thing I missed about college, which was my graphic design degree. And I was super involved with student government there. So that was incredibly formative for my leadership role. And I'm still super involved with RIT on the alumni board and in other capacities, which is fun. But back to kind of my work with next gens, I started exploring, okay, what would a program look like for that? And was doing some networking. My dad introduced me to Elizabeth Ledoux, and we kind of took it from there. The first time I met with Elizabeth, she said something to me. She goes, I can't promise you anything, but I could see a world where you could be my successor. And I was like, wait, what? She called it, I don't know that I felt ready. I don't know that I wanted to come into someone else's business. That wasn't really my vision or what I thought I was going to do with my life. But the process and the way we looked at it was really helpful. So we have an assessment called the IMAP, which I'm sure I'll talk about at some point in the future. The IMAP really looks at what's your natural wiring. Where do you have inclination to do certain things? And so on the scale of that, I come out high refiner, which means that I can really take someone else's idea and figure out how to make it better. I'm also creative a little bit. I want to come up with my own ideas, and I'm a maximizer in that I can execute ideas. And so that made me a really good potential partner for Elizabeth. So that was one component of deciding to consider accepting the invite to explore being a successor in her business. The second was my husband and I were trying to start a family. We were navigating what it looked like to potentially get pregnant. We had been trying for a while. And so when I was considering, like, do I want to be a solopreneur or run my own business or try to build my own practice alone without any support, I kind of love the idea of coming into a team and having some support. So at the end of 2023, I came in to Elizabeth's business. We decided I would just be a contractor for a little bit, just so we could explore. Do we like working together? Where do we see opportunity to potentially collaborate or plug me in? And what would that look like? Later that year, I decided that it was worth pursuing, exploring an official partnership and buyout. And so we went through the process that we go through with a lot of our clients of talking about what's important to me, what's important to you, and starting to design what the structure of the deal could actually look like, which was, I learned so much in that process. I feel for everyone as you step through kind of the process and the mechanics of coming up and designing something new, because that's really hard. It's really transformative to kind of take yourself and put you in a new type of thing. Ultimately, my husband and I are so blessed. I found out that I was pregnant in November of 23. Elizabeth and I decided to pause actively working on the deal. We did come in with what the buy-in price would be and some of the terms of the agreement before I went out on maternity leave, but I wanted to have a little bit of flexibility to see if that was even going to be the right fit or not for me afterwards. And so good transition roadmaps always leave space for people to explore what could work for them. As I went through that process and we welcomed our baby girl, and I became a mom, I started to feel this conviction that I still wanted to work with next gens. I wanted to work with rising gens. I loved kind of this space that I found myself getting into by working with Elizabeth in family businesses and working with families. So that kind of brings us to today. Elizabeth and I have completed the first part of our deal. I'm always happy to share more details on that if people have questions. I'm now a 10% owner. I'm on kind of a plan or a path to buy up to 40%, at which point we'll negotiate and see what's going to happen with the remaining percentage to kind of see. So that's our initial kind of transition roadmap, how I got into work with family businesses. And as I've gotten more into this work with family businesses, I think what I have kind of landed on is just every successor's experience is so unique and so different. There are people who choose to come into the business. There are people who choose to opt out of the business. We meet next gens who are in the business because they feel obligated. We meet next gens who share concerns about growing the value of the business too much that they won't be able to buy in anymore, or that are struggling with what is the fairness if I'm actively working in the business, but my parents still want to split it evenly between me and my other sisters. So that's why I wanted to create this space, the Your Next Gen Friend podcast, for us to just have really candid conversations about life in family business. Or if you're a successor like me in a business that is not your family, for us to come together and talk about navigating just life as a successor in general. So there's a lot of emotions that we don't get a chance to talk about in relation to family business. Guilt, maybe the employees or the people don't think that you belong there, or you feel guilty because you feel like it was just given to you, even though you have worked hard. Maybe there's shame around that. Maybe it's a little bit of imposter syndrome because there's employees who have worked there much longer than you, but your path kind of into leadership is a little bit higher. Maybe you're comparing yourself to your siblings or other people in other family businesses about their path and your path and what that looks like. Even privileged successors can feel uncertain. And I'm going to put privileged in quotes there because the opportunity to step into a business also comes with a lot of other things to process and think through. And the world has one expectation of what that is like. But there's some really good bodies of work and research on kind of our capacity as next gens to take all that work and also kind of look at your parents' legacy and then really build a legacy that's your own. So that's what I'm hoping this Your Next Gen Friend space is for, to hold all of that together. If you're a successor in any form, whether you're in the business, out of the business, trying to figure out how to talk about wealth in your family, family business, dynamics of siblings, all of those things, I invite you to just tag along. I welcome any feedback that you have, guest recommendations, topics that you'd like to hear, and any thoughts, anything that's resonating with you. Please know that I'm here to support you in your work, in your journey. And so that's it. Andrea, and that's how the brand came about. I was talking with a friend and I said, I just want to be like everyone's, I just want to be like their next gen friend, because sometimes you don't have that. It can feel alone. Being a next gen. So that's where Your Next Gen Friend came from. I've been posting some stuff on Instagram. I do a bit on LinkedIn. I would just love to start a conversation and see if there's a way I can support you in your journey. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Please check back for more episodes on Your Next Gen Friend and leave a review or send me a note to let me know what's resonating with you or where you think I should take this. All right. That's it.